The world was burning, but the real war wasn't always fought with bullets. Starved cities and endless nights where soldiers clung to life with nothing but instinct and desperation. When supply lines failed and orders meant nothing, survival became an art, a brutal kind of creativity born from hunger and cold. These men didn't have high-tech gear or manuals to follow. They had snow, fire, dirt, and willpower. And in the middle of that chaos, something extraordinary happened. They began to innovate. Tiny, improvised miracles of survival. Tricks passed in whispers, learned by failure and forgotten by history once peace returned. Official reports ignored them. Textbooks erased them. But they existed, and they worked. From heating air with a candle in a cave to making the ground itself a shield against frost, soldiers discovered methods that modern science later confirmed were years ahead of their time. These weren't myths or lucky accidents. They were hard-won truths buried beneath the ruins of war. Today, we'll uncover 10 of those secrets. The survival tricks the military tried to erase, but that nature and human ingenuity refused to forget. Most people think of war as gunfire, explosions, and chaos. But for the soldiers on the front lines, death often came quietly, through frostbite, dehydration, infection, and exhaustion. In the winter of 1944, more men in Europe lost limbs to the cold than to enemy fire. Across the Pacific, hunger hollowed soldiers into ghosts long before combat did. And on every front, sleeplessness blurred the line between reality and delirium. The body breaks fast when warmth, food, and rest are gone. What kept these men alive wasn't military training. It was raw adaptation. When rations froze solid, they learned to melt snow in their helmets. When their boots soaked through, they stuffed them with straw. When the ground itself seemed to pull the heat from their bones, they built barriers of bark and pine. They studied the elements as if nature were both enemy and teacher. Every field trick, every improvised hack, came from necessity, not invention, but defiance. And while official manuals focused on tactics and formations, these men discovered something far more powerful: that survival isn't a skill you learn from books. It's a language you speak when everything else stops working. When the cold became the real enemy, soldiers discovered their first secret: the ground bed trick. They realized that warmth wasn't stolen by the air above, but by the earth below. Lying on frozen soil was like sleeping on ice. So they built beds of branches, straw, and pine needles insulating their bodies from the ground. It wasn't comfortable, but it worked. Entire units survived nights that should have killed them. The second secret came from hunger. When supplies vanished and fires risked detection, soldiers invented the candle cave, a small dugout carved into snow or earth, sealed with cloth and lit with a single candle. The flame warmed the air just enough to thaw rations, or heat fingers without revealing smoke or light to patrols. It was warmth and secrecy in one flickering glow. The third trick addressed thirst, one of war's cruelest torments. Melting snow for water over open fire wasted fuel and time. Instead, they created what veterans later called the snow teapot. By keeping canteens close to their chests, body heat slowly melted snow inside, producing drinkable water while conserving energy. Each of these methods shared one truth: when survival demanded innovation, soldiers didn't wait for orders. They rewrote the rules of endurance themselves. The next set of secrets proved that sometimes the smallest details determined who made it. Through the night, trick number 4 was called the coal boot method. When soldiers' boots were soaked from snow or swamp, they couldn't risk open fires to dry them. So they heated small stones or chunks of coal in mess tins, wrapped them in spare cloth, and slipped them inside their boots. The warmth evaporated. Moisture without cracking the leather or alerting enemies with smoke. A single ember could mean the difference between mobility and frostbite. Trick 5 sounded like madness but saved countless toes: the wet layer paradox. In sub-zero weather, soldiers sometimes wore a thin, damp outer shirt over dry inner layers. The freezing surface created a shell, of ice that blocked wind while trapping body heat inside. Modern science later confirmed the logic. The ice acted as an insulator, and Trick 6 was about survival through deception. Smoke mirrors. Soldiers trapped behind lines would angle shards of metal, frozen canteens, or even polished belt buckles to catch sunlight and signal allies miles away. With smoke and reflection combined, they could communicate without words, often turning a hopeless situation into rescue. These weren't battlefield orders. They were battlefield wisdom, carved from experience. When nature became an enemy, these men learned not to fight it directly, but to make it obey through observation, patience, and quiet defiance. Physical endurance could carry a soldier only so far. The mind, though, when it broke, everything else followed. That's why Trick 7 wasn't a tool, but a rhythm. The buddy-breathing pact. 2 men, 1 mission, one sleeps while the other watches, then they switch, hour after hour. It wasn't just about safety. The steady exchange of duty built trust, reduced panic, and gave exhausted soldiers a pattern to hold on to when the world felt lawless. Trick 8 lived inside notebooks, scraps of paper, even the backs of ration boxes. Known later as the War Diary effect, soldiers wrote, sketched, or listed tasks to stay sane. In the act of writing, they created order where there was none, shrinking chaos down to words they could control. Some historians dismiss these as coping habits, but veterans knew better. A steady mind meant a steady hand, and a steady hand could mean survival. In silence and fear, the smallest mental anchors, shared breath, written thought, became the difference between despair and discipline. These tricks didn't just keep bodies alive, they preserved the soul's last defense, purpose. The last 2 secrets weren't just clever, they were timeless. Trick 9 was known among scouts as shadow cooking. When rations ran low and visibility meant death, soldiers cooked using the enemy's own heat. They'd wait until opposing fires dimmed, then slip into the shadows and place tins near embers or warm stones left behind. No flame, no smoke, just silent heat. It was the art of surviving inside danger itself. Trick 10 looked simple but revealed deep understanding. Insulate with motion. Soldiers learned that stillness kills faster than cold. Even while resting, they'd flex fingers, roll shoulders, and shift toes in tiny, constant motions, just enough to keep blood moving without being seen. These habits became unconscious, woven into their very posture. Together, these final tricks teach something modern life often forgets. That survival isn't about strength or equipment, it's about sensitivity. The ability to read the world around you, to use its energy instead of fight it. When everything else fails, those who adapt fastest endure. The soldiers who learned that lesson left behind more than tactics. They left a blueprint for resilience that still applies wherever humans face the edge. History may have buried their methods, but it never erased their meaning. These 10 tricks weren't products of science. They were born from desperation, discipline, and instinct. The soldiers who used them didn't think of innovation or legacy. They just wanted to see another sunrise. Yet their quiet genius endures, whispering through every lesson of fieldcraft and survival today, because nature hasn't changed, and neither has the human will to adapt. Remember them not as relics, but as reminders that even in the darkest conditions, knowledge and courage can outlast everything else.